welcome to Future Proof Mzansi, a podcast where we discuss how consumer behavior shapes our marketing plans. I'm Sena.
And I'm Natalie. I'm a colleague of Sena's at Kantar, and today I'll be filling in for Stacey as one of your hosts.
On this podcast, we interview the most creative minds and innovative thinkers about the many impactful brands in the country and why people love them.
And we discuss what makes South Africans tick, why they do the things they do, and what those things are.
Most importantly, through our discussions, we offer practical advice of how to build the brands of tomorrow. So, Nats, I'm super excited to have you co-hosting with me today. I know you're a huge fan of the podcast, so it's really awesome to have you in action.
Thanks, Sena. I'm very excited. As I said to you, I always wanted to be a host on the podcast, so great to join you. And especially considering that we'll be talking about sustainability today. And I think it's such a huge and important topic.
Absolutely. In fact, I think this is going to be one of the first of many episodes touching on the subject, actually.
Definitely. So let's kick things off. As I said, today we're talking about sustainability. And yes, it's a massive buzzword at the moment, but it impacts every single person on the planet. So I think we can safely say this is not a passing fad. It's here to stay. And I'm actually a little bit embarrassed to say, but I remember 15 years ago working with the Coca-Cola company. And back then they were already talking about sustainability. And I remember telling them, you guys are doing great. You hitting, shooting the lights out. But you know what? Nobody really cares at the moment. So it's not going to help you sell more Coke. And now look where we are today.
Oh, look where we are, Nats. Oh, my goodness. And it's become such a broad and far-reaching topic, and it's relevant to every area of business. But today we're going to be focusing on the role that marketing plays in future-proofing brands and helping people live more sustainably.
Yes, and to talk about this important topic, we've invited two people from a major brand that is making huge strides in this space.
Our first guest is responsible for driving HEINEKEN Beverages' sustainability strategy with a key focus on its ESG commitments, known as Brew a Better World. He has over 30 years' experience in leading companies including Air Liquide, Bridgestone, 3M, SAB Miller, Distal. Leong Son, welcome to Future Proof Mzansi.
Hello, Sena. Hello, Natalie. Thank you so much for having me here on your podcast. It's a topic that's very close to my heart and sustainability. Thank you.
And joining Eric in the studio today is Senior Brand Manager for Savanna Premium Cider at HEINEKEN Beverages. She has an interest in improving the lives of others and a passion for building brands. She has held various roles across different brands and agencies and has been working at HEINEKEN and previously Distal for the last 5 years. It is a pleasure to have you here today, Kayla Hendricks.
Guys, I'm so thrilled to be here today. Sena and Natalie, thank you so much for the invitation, and surely no pressure after that intro.
I can't wait. We clearly have two powerhouses joining us here today. Okay, but before we kick off on the subject matter of the day, we always like to ask our guests a little bit more about themselves. So, Eric, could you tell us how you got into sustainability?
Sena, it's a little bit half luck, half design, and I'm going to be telling my age here. So it was in the early 2000s. I was running procurement in Africa and Asia with my previous role, and I was truly frustrated with all the import issues, and I wanted to localize the value chain, and I started developing farming programs in Africa. I was looking at sorghum, maize, cassava, barley as an input for beer in Uganda, Ghana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and also setting local plants and can operation in Angola, Tanzania, India, China, Vietnam, and all of that. And it just started attracting a lot of positive attention. And I got so passionate about helping local communities and businesses. And and as you know, in around 2015, 2016, there was a big launch of the Sustainable Development Goals. So there was a big attention on corporate. So it was like a match made in heaven. My passion, my ability to help and contribute to all these programs and communities, and all the lens that the global world was putting on sustainability. So I got to live my passion, and this is history.
Great. And Kayla, could you tell us a bit about your career journey and perhaps some of the brand work you've been particularly proud of?
Sure. Yeah. With just a few years under my belt so far, I've had the honor of starting my career as an intern on Hunter's Cider before leaping into over to the agency side of the table. And that really was super fundamental for me, not only building an understanding of how brands meet the consumer on a very practical level, but we also dedicated ourselves to understanding influence and the role of insight in the context of influence during the rise of the influencer. And so we built programs for brands like Martal, GH Mom, Uber Eats, Pro Nutro, and Weet-Bix. And that's only escalated to an opportunity to get my hands dirty on client side, to build brands like Cruise and Count Pushkin Vodka, Gordon's Gin, and over the last 3 years, Savanna Premium Cider in South Africa. And the two projects that I'm particularly proud of on Savannah is contributing to establishing the Savannah Comedy Bar as a brand-owned platform, but also a sustainability piece for the SA comedy industry, and the gift that keeps on giving on Savannah, which is the launch of Savannah Chill Chili.
Great. Thanks, Kayla. Can't wait to hear a little bit more as we go along. So, Kantar recently released the Mzansi Barometer. And one of the things that was emphasized is the fact that, South Africans are excessively affected by the combined impact of global and local economic, social, and environmental crises. If you just think about our energy crisis, our mass unemployment, our gender-based violence, and extreme weather and floods. So, Eric, I was wondering, what has been your experience of South African consumers' understanding of the need for sustainability? And do you think they appreciate the importance?
Natalie, they fully appreciate the importance, both the impact and also lack of it, and also kind of like almost calling out those who do greenwashing, etc. We need to realize that our consumers are digitally savvy and they're so connected. They're all more or less a reporter and a news anchor these days, You look at the Gen Z. They're on TikTok, WhatsApp, X, Facebook, Insta, not Instagram, they call it Insta. And with a smartphone, they are so opinionated, and rightly so. You've seen the rise of consumer activism. They want to be heard and they don't want to be messed around. And you can see they understand consumer power, brand power, and what resonates with them and also what doesn't, and how do they take action.
Great. And on the organizational side, obviously big brands like Heineken have acknowledged and fully embraced the importance of sustainability as well. But not just because it's the right thing to do for the people and the planet, but because it makes good business sense. And we've seen that in our data as well. In the latest Brand Z release and our sustainability index, we see that brands that actually go for sustainability and really think about it, grow 31% year on year. And in South Africa, we see how sustainability has driven brand growth and how it has become more important for brands year on year. But do you think that South African organizations or perhaps industries have not fully caught up to its significance?
Natalie, I actually don't think so. I think big companies with big brands, they have to understand their consumer and adapt and deliver on it. And there are so many great examples of brand with purpose and brand that cares, and how that plays in terms of that ethos and being able to capitalize on market share. I'm a big fan of Unilever, and I always love their Dove campaign that everybody knows, and Lifebuoy, saving lives. And to bring it home at Heineken Beverages, I absolutely love the Benini campaign. The power of women, to support each other, to defy expectation, and to do incredible things. And also we've got the Heineken, the very first Heineken bottle, we call the Star Bottle, which is a first of Heineken being sold in a returnable bottle. We've launched this campaign of Fields of Green, not glass. And it's amazing. We're creating this green zone, and consumers are catching up to that and those messages. And even Savannah, in terms of a lot of recycling campaign we're doing. And you can see a lot of those cheeky ads that plays into it. And Heineken, in terms of, it's not just a beer for men, but also for social inclusion and women and absolute love and all of that. So I would say it would be absolutely silly for companies not to understand that and to ignore that market potential and to capitalize on all these great examples that I've given to you.
That is
Percent.
indeed fantastic examples. And I think I liked particularly what you said about consumer activism being on the rise. And I can certainly see it in my
Mm.
day to day life. But Kayla, I want to switch it to you because our Brand Z Sustainability Index also found that sustainability remains one of the most important drivers of corporate reputation, contributing up to 45%. Would you agree with this?
Yeah, Sena, yes, I would. What are we doing here if not making sure we leave a lasting positive impact, right? And there's a lot to do, and consumers, people in general, are often conflicted. So much to do. Where do I start? Where corporate entities have allowance and resource to find their role, their avenue in the broader sustainability mission. And consumers know that now more than ever and are holding corporate companies, brands accountable for that. People naturally have a respect for those corporates meeting the needs of the present without compromising the future. And as consumers, we feel better about those corporates and those brands that we know are not compromising the future. If anything, they are bettering it. So, yes, absolutely, I would agree.
And I want to speak about from an advertising perspective because I am such a fan of Savannah's adverts. But from an advertising perspective, 63% of ads with a sustainability message stood out, whereas only 49% without a sustainability message were barely distinctive. So can you think of a really good purpose-filled advert or campaign where this was true and it truly aligned with the brand? It can be either from Savannah or Heineken or any brand that you respect.
Sure. And maybe my disclaimer should be that I absolutely love Savannah, much like you've just expressed. And so there is going to be a bit of a bias to my answer on this one. But yes, Savannah has had a history in humor, right? And that became a lot more tangible with the introduction of the Savannah Comedy Bar in 2020 that sought to ensure we still have a thriving South African comedy industry through the harsh realities of COVID. And Savannah found its avenue there, an avenue that was sensible for the brand in the mind of consumers. With a future focused mindset, we built the first year with the next in mind. And so sustainability really at the core of how we built out this, what would become a brand owned platform for Savannah in its endeavor to ensure the sustainability of our South African comedy industry. And we knew that part of this job was also making this endeavor meaningful for the people of South Africa. And so, with every year of the Savannah Comedy Bar since, our communication has been centered on a national call to action to support South African comedy, and specifically the comedians who make that up. And that really is our passion piece, our hearty piece on the Savannah brand.
So I must say I'm also a huge fan of Savannah. I'm also an avid user of the product, so it's not just advertising. But it's really been one of the brands for me that has been so consistent in what it stands for, right? The dry humor and the comedy has been something you've been using for ages. Kayla, we see also in our research that 99% of South Africans, I don't know where the other 1% is, but we'll find them somewhere, but 99% of them want to live a sustainable lifestyle, but only 15% are actually actively changing their behavior. And even further, 24% of consumers feel that sustainability isn't their responsibility. It's up to businesses and producers. What role do you think brands play in helping them change their behavior?
I think the job to do for brands in changing behavior are adopting relevant ways to the brand positioning to embark on that sustainability agenda, making sure that it's sensible and relevant to consumers. Simplifying sustainability is also key. You know, it's like this big job to do. And to that question around where do I start? Making it easy for consumers, bite-sized ways for consumers to future-proof their lives and the enjoyment of things, incentivizing behavior change with real positive reinforcement and regular updates on progress, demonstrating the impact as it happens helps to get people more invested over time. Getting influencers, content creators, and other brands involved in creating and showcasing the positive outcome unfolding is really important for consumers. And we've seen that unfold beautifully in our endeavor to support South African comedy with collaborations with Comedy Central, One Eye Jack, and their dedication to the Comics Choice Awards. The comedians themselves working with them directly to understand what their needs are, how the industry is functioning, and doing and understanding what our role can be to further that and enrich that. Getting the people's favorites, our influencers behind the comedians, showcasing that, getting them to attend the shows and showing people like this group support of this initiative. And then finally, accountability through the line. Most sustainability agendas are ambitious. They're really good initiatives that offer beautiful ideals for consumers. But to get their buy in, it often comes down to consumers really feeling like they can hold the brand or the company accountable for these claims or initiatives.
Thanks, Kayla. I think another thing that we know is holding South Africans back in making sustainable choices is the cost of living issue, right? So saving money is generally more important when it comes to making purchases and the purchase decisions. So I'm just going to switch this over to you, Eric, and I just ask you what you would say is standing in the way of consumers being able to live more sustainably, and what role can brands play in overcoming that perception of anything that's sustainable or good for the planet or socially sustainable is going to cost me more money.
Natalie, like you mentioned, many people associate sustainability with cost, and it doesn't have to be. It's actually quite the opposite. Sustainability is about being less is more. It's about being kinder on the planet and care for people. I mean, you can think of things like less packaging, less plastic, innovative bio ingredients, and you need to be authentic. You need to be truthful, and more so to build on what Kyla said. You need to have clear and unambiguous messaging. You need to educate, communicate, and show your portfolio of evidence so you're not greenwashing. And also we need to be aware that sustainability is still something we tend to lag versus Northern Hemisphere countries in Southern Hemisphere and in South Africa, right? I was in Finland last year, November. I'll just share something with you. We ship our wine in bulk and we package it there in Helsinki, just outside there. We've got a plant. And two oceans in what we call in box wine in South Africa, and we bulk in bag, is seen as premium with the youth there. They love it. They think it's clean, it's neat, it's a sharing pack, and they can bring it to events. It doesn't cause litter. And in South Africa, people are still saying, oh, it's an eco pack. But things are changing. If you look at the sales trend of 4th Street, it's been amazing. It's been growing. People are standing that, whenever you buy this bulk pack, it's cleaner, it's easier to share, it doesn't cause litter, and the communication and the messaging behind 4th Street has been playing into that, and it's actually amplifying that messaging. I would also say it's very important that whenever you do, obviously when a brand, there's so many people internally, externally that plays to make that brand possible. As you now come from a procurement and supply chain background, procurement is all about risk mitigation, cost, and you can actually play in their KPI and deliver on sustainability. Supply chain don't want complex supply chain, and I was giving you example of localizing the supply chain in Africa. They don't want to deal with forex and port demurrages and everything, and you say local is lacquer. And these are those brands that resonate with the people. It works, and people love that.
Eric, I think you touched on so much there, and I think I completely agree with you. It must be sustainability encompasses so many different elements, and it's not what we generally think it is. But I know from experience that sometimes it's difficult as a consumer to be able to discern which products are ethically good, quote, good or bad. So, Kayla, what do you think is the role of brands in sort of bridging this knowledge gap? Is it a marketing gap? What can brands do to educate consumers more?
Sure, Sena. I think it's about accessibility more than anything. Transparency with labeling and certifications are incredibly important, yes, but also supporting that with the communication on what those labels mean, what the stickers mean. You know, seeing it on pack is one thing, but really understanding what that means for the product or the business or the brand is super key to making this super meaningful to consumers or to people in general. And then of course, like doing your staple things, like having that social content plan monthly dedicated to helping consumers understand what your sustainability initiatives are, what are the tools that you are using. Another vehicle is content marketing and storytelling. Brands are best positioned to educate in ways that give the brand some creative license, but also opportunity to really resonate with a good story in this education endeavor. For example, last year, Savannah chose to address the topic of rising sea levels with Savannah Dry Goods. And that was an interesting one because the brand, I spoke about avenues, choosing your lane kind of in the sustainability space. And you would say to me, but Kayla, global warming, rising sea levels, that's not your avenue. But we saw an opportunity in for something that was super, super topical to the brand's audience. We saw that opportunity to also bring the brand's creative platform, that's Savannah South Africa. We get you, South Africa. We're going to talk about something that we know is bothering you, that you're talking about, with the consumer passion point as our vehicle being fashion in that case. And so we launched a sustainable fashion line, or drip, as we called it, which was crafted by Wanda Laporto, a incredible local South African designer. And we created this fashion line for a world underwater. And with storytelling at the center of how that came to life, we visualized this possible reality in a way consumers only knew Savannah to do. And it made for a really good awareness effort. It was our way of making this issue more meaningful to consumers. And I think in that case study, there's something to be said about the importance and the value of storytelling, using that as your vehicle of meaning for consumers, and making that super sensible for these sustainability efforts, super sensible for the brands that we work on.
Thanks, Kayla. That's an awesome example. And I think, Eric, I'm going to ask you a question, but it sort of adds to that because you mentioned that you have to be authentic in the space, but not the fact is that not all brands can be credible and authentic in solving every issue in their market sector, right? How do you decide, which brands can play where? And like you said, Kayla, like what is your lane? How do you make those decisions and manage that at Heineken?
I think it's all about educating and empowering the team because you work in synergy across the business with all your colleagues, right? So, in essence, our role in the sustainability team, we call it orchestrating. So, the best way I can describe it, think of it of a bandmaster orchestrating the choir and the philharmonic orchestra and make everybody sing in unison and make beautiful music so that the tone is resonated across the business and you work as a team. So we've created this concept called a green tribe. So where we have people from various functions and they attend those which I manage in my team, and we manage those monthly meeting and they become ambassadors of what good looks like. And we work that. And we have what we call a Brew a Better World house. So there's a roof for the governance that we work, and then the body of a house where each function knows how they have to do. And then like a house, got a foundation that we work with support function like legal, data and technology, and HR and all of that to make sure that there's clarity of role and action, and yet we work as a team and we all make sure that we understand how we sell our message to the leadership forum, how we act. We are ambassadors within our function. And also we do a lot of what we call green claim policy training. It's mandatory so that whenever you have external disclosure of anything, whether it's data or qualitative, there is a style of what good looks like and what is frowned upon so that you stay clear of what is greenwashing. So we all want to tell our messaging, but there's a style of communicating that messaging, and I make sure that everybody understand that. Yeah, and also working with industry bodies, and we're part of the United Global Compact, a lot of industry bodies in South Africa and globally. So there's a lot of best practice that you can capitalize on, and you're also learning from your peers and keep abreast of trends so that you can educate everybody internally and externally and capitalize on the synergy of the team.
I really love that, the green tribe. And I think what you've just described there also resonated with me, and that it has to start within the business, right? Before you can actually authentically take that out to the people with your brand. Okay, over to you, Kayla. So what is your advice for brands who don't know where to start when it comes to communicating their sustainability journey? I mean, you had that great Savannah example, but sometimes that link isn't as easy to make. Where do you start?
The first is just starting small, starting with the good assessment of your current environmental and social impact of the brand. Because that's when, you've heard me say what's sensible for the brand, or the company, often in this conversation today. And a big part of understanding that is understanding where you currently stand. What are the issues that are prevalent to your full ecosystem of how that product lands with the consumer, and what are the opportunities for impact within that. Second, I think to be clear about how the brand or the company can reasonably make a difference and consistently so, rather than overstated achievements and claims. Don't underestimate the small starts and the small wins in a really big effort. Make a plan to bring that to the fore in your comms. Educate the audience about the issue and the role the brand or the company is going to take. Land a sustainability narrative with a compelling story and make it richer with more stakeholders adding to that story. Stakeholders like other brands, influencers, consumers, getting them involved in the initiative, NGOs, experts, ease the lines of feedback from consumers who feel they can add value. With feedback comes like real indications of personal investments from consumers. When they start having something to say about what you are doing, that means they're getting invested. And that often opens the brand up and its sustainability if it's up to a whole community that can stand behind that sustainability narrative. And then finally, and I would say most importantly, especially when navigating a corporate agenda, is patience. And it's a journey, a marathon, if you will. And it's important to be patient and persistent and to be the guardian of that. As meaningful change, especially when we refer to behavioral change, it really does take time. I think those are the key things to
Thanks,
do.
Kayla. I'm also passionate about saying where you were saying be patient, and I think adding to that is be consistent as well. You
Mm,
know,
for sure.
Keep-
Kayla, obviously, I think exactly that consistency that Nats is speaking about is so important to make sure that the consumer can also believe that this is a genuine effort on behalf of the brand. And I know that Heineken launched its Taverns of the Future last year, and I'm super excited about this because I think it's amazing. But could you tell our listeners a little bit more about this initiative and what it means for your brand and its sustainability message?
So, Tavern of the Future, super exciting project where we as Heineken Beverages transform existing licensed taverns into sustainable, responsible social enterprises. And we do this through four pillars. The one is facility enhancement. So, this is where we invest in general enhancement of the outlet, focusing on hygiene and sanitation by ensuring that outlets have clean male and female toilets. Secondly, we focus on multiple income streams, and this is all about shifting the negative perception around taverns through being thought of as just drinking halls. We introduce other sources of income, like introducing food as well as other non-alc alternatives like soft drinks into that space, And then also around focusing on the experience within those taverns becomes super important to us. And so we do our bit to elevate the consumer experience in those outlets to change the drinking behavior by introducing different offerings such as wine by the glass and draft beer, for example. And then finally, we train and upskill our customers based on basic business acumen and adherence to licensing conditions, such as promoting no underage drinking and other issues.
That's amazing. It's very exciting. So this is also something I'm quite passionate about. So we know that in South Africa, sustainability is more about social issues rather than the environment, right? Not every country is the same, and we always have this conundrum where we work with global brands and have to work with global teams and make them understand, how it works in South Africa. I remember working with a brand last year, and the global initiative was to take air pollution and turn it into ink, which sounds great and amazing, but how meaningful is that to people in South Africa and Africa as well? So why, and Eric, I'm gonna ask you this question. Why do you think it's important for global brands to adapt their focus depending on country priorities rather than just a blanket approach across all regions?
I always say in Northern Hemisphere, we read ESG, and in Southern Hemisphere and emerging market, we should read G, S, and E. So that you need to get your governance right, understand the social impact and how that's working with environment. Because obviously in Northern Hemisphere, developed market, they've had all the societal rules and legislation and empowerment. They're decades ahead of many countries of us. So they obviously can focus a lot on the E, right? And there's so many reports. I'll give you two examples. There are so many reports in terms of how climate change impacts youth and women is not the same depending on countries. How climate change is impacting somebody in London and New York is not the same. How it's impacting somebody living in Kalicha and Soweto. You can see how women and youth, their quality of life, being able to deserve an income and their safety through all those floods and also issues we've been having in the recent years in South Africa, they are more at risk than somebody that's living in London and New York. So you need to take cognizance of that and look at your constituent and what is that doing to your societal issues. Another example, if I look at waste pickers in Europe, Northern Hemisphere, straightforward diversion from landfill. But for us, when we run our programs, we have two amazing programs called Green Up and Vuvuzela. We look at it a day in the life of a waste picker. You have to flick it and look at it from a humane perspective. People, there's issues of robbery, the cash system, how you decash the waste pickers, how do you look at their lifestyle, how do you give them safety, and holistically work on the diversion on landfill and circularity and make the project more humane and look at their whole life from bottle to cradle to grave and that circularity. And that's exactly the impact you want to make. It's not in isolation. You need to have a holistic approach and look at that synergy and look at what it matters in the law of the land with you.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about that, and it is sometimes very difficult to explain to people. Like you said, Northern Hemisphere versus Southern Hemisphere, there's big differences, and if you don't take that into account, what you're putting out there is not necessarily that meaningful. To add to that, one of the things that we've heard a lot is that South African brands are still too focused on CSR rather than focusing on how sustainability should, in fact, be an integral part of their business strategy and growth. Any thoughts on that, Eric?
No, I think definitely the big companies are changing completely. I sit on a few industry bodies and I interact a lot with my peers, my equivalent in all these big retail brands and manufacturing side. They all have their head of sustainability, right? So with the advent also of integrated reporting, where you have to do both the financial reporting and your ESG reporting together and link it with your strategy. The days of only focusing on CSR are long gone. And also with pressures on brands and all of that, you need the advent of shared value where you have to please both your community's government and your shareholders. And then the concept of double materiality, where you need to understand what is your company impact on the environment and how the environment is impacting your company. So, for example, is your company polluting water? And what does that mean? And how you're going to disclose about it? And what is day zero or drought impacting quality of water for you to operate as a business? That concept of double materiality reporting is very transparent. It's catching a lot of airtime, and you need to understand that. And people are shifting from this basically what people were doing decades before of pure CSI, CSR. And also now in Europe, you have this big advent of CSRD, which is Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, where you have to report on all these points. And if you don't get it right, you're going to be a fossil. You're going to be completely isolated, and you're not keeping up with the Jones.
I like that analogy, Eric, a fossil.
Awesome.
Um, okay, so just to wrap us off, Eric, I'm going to bring this one to you with your wealth of experience of getting in front of boards and making the commercial case for sustainability. What would be your parting words to listeners about why sustainability is good for business? People will always want to know how it drives results and impacts the bottom line. What is your take?
I will keep it simple, Sena. I will say focus on the word and, A-N-D. So a lot of people say it's often profit or purpose. I will just remove that word or, I'll replace it and. So profit and purpose. When you have this paradigm shift and you can understand that profit and purpose can coexist in synergy and add to your business, you can unlock so many benefits and values for the employees, communities, shareholders, your consumers, and your brand. So, and to do that, you have to work as a team with your green tribes. That example, bring everybody together and says, what matters for you? Head of procurement. Yes, I want to reduce costs. I want to have less risk. Let's see how sustainability can deliver to your KPIs, and use the word and. It can reduce costs and be sustainable. Marketing, you want brand love. Let's educate and work on the word and. Just replacing that word or to end, it can unlock so much value.
So, thank you so much, Eric and Kayla, for coming on our podcast. I've personally learned a lot. Like I said, I wish I could go back 15 years and go and tell Coke what's gonna happen in 15 years' time. But I'm sure we've just scratched the surface. I know we have, and I do think we'll probably have more episodes on this topic. But before we let you go, we always like to ask our guests some more general question to get a glimpse of what interests you. So, starting with you, Kayla, which brands in South Africa, other than Heineken and Savannah, so putting you on the spot, do you think are doing well in the sustainability space as it relates to brand perception?
I think based on everything that we've discussed today, if I can think about a South African brand that really speaks to this, my choice would be Amarula and its loyal heart for elephant conservation, but also in the way that we've just beautifully seen that story of a brand choosing a sensible sustainability avenue, sticking to it consistently, making it meaningful to consumers in clarifying their role. Like, it's a big agenda, but what are we doing about it? And then to my earlier point about getting the buy-in of collaborators, one being a very fruitful partnership with Bayer's Chocolates and the Amarula Trust that extends safeguarding elephants to now also contributing towards sustainable practices in the cocoa industry with the Amarula chocolate. So that's just like a never-ending story of beautiful sustainability opportunities. Definitely a fave for me.
Beautiful. Thanks, Kayla. And Eric, for you, what does the future look like?
Natalie, there's a few trends I just want to highlight. I think the first one is the rise of consumer rights. You've seen this whole thing of No Planet B, the right of consumer activism against greenwashing, taking up big companies and big leaders. So that's definitely a big trend. The second one is about the double materiality assessment and reporting, where it's not just doing good and you get away with it. You need to understand both the negative and the positive side, and how your impact on the planet and how the planet is impacting you. The third trend is definitely more statutory disclosure. It's not a nice to do. You are mandatory told to disclose what's happening within your business. And lastly, I think like people are getting smarter about storytelling. You have both the quantitative side, where you need to understand your numbers and your trends and reporting on all of that. And then the qualitative side. And I think Kayla was alluding to that, is basically telling your story. Because if you don't tell your story, nobody else will tell it for you. So how do you bring it home and make it authentic and resonate with your consumer and customer?
Thank you so much, Eric and Kayla. This has been such an educational episode, but also the passion that you have for people and planet just emanates off this interview. And I am so grateful that you took the time to join us today, and I'm sure our listeners are grateful too. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in, and thank you to my co-host Nat. I definitely hope that you'll be back. But for more information, you can follow Insights by Kantar on LinkedIn and X. We would love to hear from you, so please leave us a review, and remember to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube so that you never miss an episode. Until next time, goodbye.